Welcome to Season 1, Episode 8 of the Morning Poems Podcast, a podcast where I read my previously published poetry found on Facebook and Instagram. Hi, I'm Tess McCarthy, your host and poet. I've written over 1,400 poems and counting. I'm on a mission to write about 1,800 poems in honor of poet Emily Dickinson, who wrote a little bit over 1,700 poems in her lifetime. Quite a feat, and I'm very obsessed, and I've been extremely exhausted. I had gotten COVID during this season. It's definitely telling me to slow down and quit spitting out episodes as if I could just do it every day. It's not like I can do it every day. I can, but it's more of a marathon and not a sprint. So that's why I'm just like giving up on saying I've done 1,400 poems. Why am I talking about my poetry count? Because I want to beat Emily Dickinson, okay? I want to beat the Dickinson out of her. I've been talking about it every episode, and I'm gonna do it. Just not today. All right. So, a bit of housekeeping. If you like my morning poem so far, and if you like season 1, stay tuned or tune into my not so updated Instagram account, Morning Poems. I'm also going to be looking into revamping my website, and also I'm strumming along digitizing my written work. If you want to see the bulk of my poetry, it's better to follow me on Facebook under Tess McCarthy 1, and I'll start posting that. The Instagram account is basically shameless promotion for Morning Poems, which is me. I can say that I am Morning Poems. I don't want to be a person, I just want to be an entity. Yeah, you don't have to follow me on social media or do anything. I'm beginning to see that this whole social media thing is just, oh, I don't know. It's a social Ponzi scheme. It's so bizarre. I'm currently rereading my poetry and engaging with people on Substack. Some shout outs. Over the course of this time on Substack, I've fallen for some accounts. The cultural philosophical fireworks account is just fantastic. Maya Brown Jackson of Maya Writes is wonderful. I've been following Kate McGunkle's Substack and Nan Tepper's Next Right Thing. Oh my gosh. If I'm remembering, this is good because they've managed to seep into my head. Another shout out is to Tom Ford. I'm laughing, and I know I said Tom Ford because the joke that I keep on proliferating is that my iPhone keeps on correcting Troy Ford of Q Stack and Ford Knows. So those are his Substack to Tom Ford because I'm all into fashion. Or Siri, that bee must know I'm a total fashion hoe. Not really. I don't have all the fancy clothes, but I do have a simple pared down wardrobe. I generally do an episode recap and close what we've talked about in the previous episodes. So this is not to be missed. Episode 7 talked about my issues with dressing up for Mass. Mass going to church, actually. It's a term we use. But I talk about gender and I talk about neurodivergency. And I did the poem at a time where I didn't know about my diagnosis. And it was interesting to explore that. Anyways, today is Saturday, August 17th, 2024. And I'm going to be reading poems from 2014 and 2016. Why? because it's mommy poetry. And today is my mother's birthday, August 17th. She was born in 1927, and she would have been 97 today. And I miss my mother. You wouldn't believe. She had me when she was 43 years old, and my little brother when she was 45. And she was 14 years older than my dad, who loved her very much. When I think about my parents, they loved each other tremendously, extremely affectionate and devoted to each other. I try to have as much pictures of them around me as much as possible because I miss them. I think I was hearing on a podcast today that true wisdom comes when you can forgive your parents. And I'm not saying that I'm wise by any stretch, but I'm saying that I have learned a lot from forgiving my parents for failing, for being human, for hitting me, for telling me that I was worthless and ugly and stupid and not being valued, for not sticking up for me and all the things. But it took me several decades to come to this conclusion, to come to this realization. What's left, I think, in the process of forgiving my parents, both equally, my mother and my father. But I think in this process of all the inner work is like weeding a garden for me. Like my whole life up until now has been weeding a garden, and this process of doing the work of working through the trauma, working through the experience, forgiving myself, forgiving my mother has been like pulling weeds and cultivating the soil. It's really interesting because my parents loved to garden together, and my dad used to be a gardener for the city of Los Angeles. So it's really interesting. I'm using the metaphor of gardening. Right into the poetry. I'm going to be reading poems 56 and 372. I've stopped numbering them because on the morning poems catalog, I've been just finding error after error, and I haven't been able to just really clean it up. I'm probably going to have to do a net new catalog. But the poetry from 2014 is about poem number 56, and that's entitled Happy Birthday, Mommy from Leon. And the poem from 2016 is about poem number 372, and that's entitled August 17th, 1927. Both are about my mother, who was born on this day. The first poem for 2014, Happy Birthday, Mommy from Lyon, was literally written while I was touring through the south of France with my ex, and we were going through the town of Lyon in France. Now, go to Europe, I initially loved flying into Paris, and I like staying in the 10th arrondissement, and I don't even know if I'm saying it, but I like staying at Le Citizen Hotel, and that is located, I think, on Le Canal du Saint-Martin. Just pardon my French. Every time when we've traveled to Europe, we used to fly in through France and take a train to where we were going. And if I can do it again, I would just fly in through Paris and go stay at Le Citizen. It's really cool. I remember my therapist was going through France and she took a picture of Le Citizen Hotel. So this is a big shameless plug for that hotel. They have the cleanest white sheets, and I love the proprietress. But then to Lyon. We find this place in Lyon, and it's very charming. And there's this little golden retriever there. The golden retrievers in Europe are so cute. I have a lot of stories. Happy Birthday, Mommy was written from Lyon. And I'm talking about the experience I had that day, just going to this town and thinking, today is my mom's birthday. She's not here materially. But boy, if she could travel with me, if she could see me happy with my beloved at the time, if she could just see this country that she had never had gone to, if she could see France, wouldn't that be cool? My mother loved traveling to churches, but we never really traveled anywhere because we were so poor. So when I was in Lyon on that day, on her birthday, I took her with me and just carrying her in my heart. And I said to myself, I'm going to take you everywhere, Mommy, with me. And so this poem is about that. When we get into the poem entitled August 17th, 1927, it's 2 years later. This is poetry from 2016, and it's about poem 372. Now, the narrator or the speaker of the poem has shifted. So in 2014, we are talking about going through the day with my mom with me, and I'm the speaker. When we get to 2016, I shift the focus and become my mother as narrator. And a lot of my later poems about my mother, especially from this time, 2016, 2017, I'm writing the poetry as if my mother is the speaker of the poem, telling the story because she used to tell so many great stories. And I began my mother's storytelling in poetic form with her birthday. So that's a little bit about poem 372, or the poem from August 17th, 2016. All right. And I'm hoping that you really enjoy this episode. It's short, it's sweet. It's about my mom. I love her so much. Okay. And now for the poems. Happy Birthday, Mommy, from Lyon, August 17th, 2014. Hope you liked walking through the streets with Eileen and I. You even followed me into that Gallic Roman museum and watched over my shoulders as I drew ancient Roman artifacts. All stone, you told me. Too much. But we went into that church high on the hill. A long tapered candle I lit in your name for €1, and you were gone. Guess there was someone calling for you. You went out in a poo, like when you've moved your birthday wish on your birthday cake. Morning poems. And now for poetry from 2016. August 17, 2016. Morning Poem 372. August 17, 1927. I do not know the weather conditions that day, nor can I recall what day it was when my mother brought me into this world, but it was a force of effort which I would experience myself, having brought in about 12 children of my own, but really some not surviving, which always has made me so sad. On this day, I'll tell you that my brothers and sisters welcomed me. If not, they were perhaps jealous. But I am the last of all my mother's children, so I must be the best and last. I tell my daughter stories because I can't remember details, nor can I find the words in her language, English, to describe relationships to people or things the way I can in my language. I know I've said this before, but in my language, we have words for those interrelated things. Maybe I told my youngest daughter how all the doctors, witch doctors, midwives, and physicians ran to our home to help my mother in labor, because I knew somehow there was a big, dramatic commotion stirring. Then all things stopped the minute I breathed into the air. That was the true story. However, I told my daughter I was born under a lily pad and was found by my father, who discovered me on top of that lily pad, and that I was covering myself with the petals of the flower that grew from it. Silly me, huh? I also forgot to tell her I had fairy wings, too. Morning Poems. And that was the end of episode 8. And also the end of season 1. But don't fret. Season 2 is coming up in a couple of weeks, and I can't wait to share more. And hopefully I can intersperse some quick, dirty little poems. There's nothing dirty about it. But things are going to change and shift because in September around this time, I have a poetry series called Witch Lore. And so the entire month of September, just going to be one long narrative of witch lore, which doesn't really have an ending yet. The Morning Poems podcast is a podcast that's produced, written, and spoken by yours truly. And if you like more of the morning poems, please stay tuned and read more of my poetry from 2018 at least on Morning Poems at Morning Poems _ on Instagram. I hope you've had a great time listening to season 1 so far. I can't wait for all of you to join me for season 2. Stay tuned.